Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.93, and in this lesson we're going to take a look at our last instrument container, the drum machine. I've held the drum machine off until the very end because I have a feeling if you've worked in this program and you've been making music, you've probably already been using the drum machine. But I've been trying to show you guys that you can make interesting music regardless of the tools you have access to. But let's finally talk about the drum machine. So in its most basic and utilitarian function, the drum machine can be used to load up drum kits. So I can load up a kit like so, have record on here. Okay, and I can play in notes like so. First thing to be aware of is that if I double click and go into my MIDI note editor here, I can click the fold on, turn it back off and on again, and then we can see everything we have in our drum kit. Now, if I don't choose to play a note that's a part of the drum kit, like I didn't play this note here, it does not disappear. All right, and that's really helpful. So if you're just in here programming beats by hand and not recording them in, you want to make sure you have access to everything. It shows us the notes that don't exist within there, but obviously if I try to play them back, I don't get anything. So I could go in, delete them, reopen and close the fold, and just like that, I have access to all of my little drum samples and cells. Now, where people get really excited about the drum machine, or I guess for some people they just expect this, you can go to the mix view and you can actually pop this guy open here. And so everything that is inside of the drum machine is grouped and bussed out to the major instrument, but you can go into each of the cells individually and apply some processing or some volume adjustments and panning. I want you guys to remember though that if you're working with something like, say, the instrument layer, you can have multiple instances of like a polysynth, and you get those same sort of mix controls from here. So it's not like this is some sort of revolutionary technology, but it is very helpful for organizational purposes. If you have a drum machine that has like 32 samples and you don't want to see them all when you're actually mixing, you can only open it up when you need to. And so I could go in here and I could then add a distortion. Do something along those lines, whatever, and I can change the actual relative level from here. Inside of the drum machine itself, we can see all of these cells are populated. If I double click, it will open up like so, and we can see we have two devices in here, so two blocks. If the distortion is inside of the effects location, we go back to one block because it's assuming now that the distortion is part of the sampler, which for all intent and purpose, it is at this point. Okay, we can take samples and drag them around. We can copy, we can paste, we can cut, we can do whatever we want to do there. If we hold Command R, we can rename this and just call it kick. My C key is still not working, so it's just going to be KIK. And etc., etc. We can delete cells by command clicking and then just hitting the delete button. So if there's things we're not using, we can always go in and just delete them. So what are some other uses of the drum machine besides just simple drum programming and loading in kits? One thing people like to do is use the drum machine for organization and to store presets that they've made. Because right now, if we create something in the polysynth and we save the preset, it gets saved with all the rest of the polysynth presets. And maybe we want a quicker way to just find all of our bass sounds that we've made. So what you could consider doing is having a drum machine, taking our polysynth, saying, oh yeah, that's a great sound, dragging it, going into the drum machine, dropping it, creating another polysynth, making a new dirty sound, dragging it, dropping it in like so. And now if you've spent like a couple weeks and you've made 100 or so really good bass patches, you can have them all from this one drum machine. The one downside is that you can only listen to them at like root pitch. So you'll hear all of them like at a C. And there's really no way to adjust that. You can't put note effects at the start and then change the pitch. You'd actually have to go in and adjust it like so. But if you're the type of person who just likes to focus on like arranging and making tracks at a different time than designing the sounds, it's very helpful to just load this in, listen to your different sounds, and then when you find something you like, you can copy it. And then let's create a new instrument track. And then you can paste it in, and then you can listen and say, okay, is this really what I want to use? Or do I want to go back in and try to find something different? So that's a possibility. You could then go in here and we could save this and call it like Brian Basses. Okay. It's not something I do, but I know a lot of people like to do something like that. The other thing of having a drum machine that can be very helpful is if you have or you're working with a style of music that requires really fast transitions between parts, you could drop in all of those audio clips you have. Like, I don't know. I wish I had something a little bit better. Okay, so I'll take like these guys. I'll drag and I'll drop them in here. And now they've all gone into a sampler like so. And I could go in here now. And if I needed to make rapid transitions between these guys, I could just draw in the notes. And then I could do, you know, some glitches or something. So that's something people will do with music like dubstep. You might wonder, how do they make all those crazy breakdowns after the drop? How do they do that? And a really common technique is to use something like a drum machine. So they've made all of those different bass sounds, they've put them into samplers, drop it into one drum machine, and then just kind of come up with an interesting pattern. And it's really easy. It saves you so much time as compared to having 100 different instrument tracks going and then trying to get them to sound just right. And after you've come up with that really cool drop section, you can resample it to audio. And then as you have it in audio, you can make additional adjustments, parameters, chops, etc. So that is one really popular use of the drum machine. The last thing I wanted to show you is how you could actually use the drum machines in combination. So if we create an XY instrument, and this is just to show you that this doesn't work, and then if I create a drum machine in A and I create it in B, if I go back and I tab over, I can't open up the XY instrument further, so I don't get that individual control over all the drum machine cells. However, I'm not sure if people know this or not, if you create an instrument layer and then drop in two drum machines, boom, we can go in and we can open those guys up. And then when we add a cell in here, we have the ability to open these up further. So when would this be helpful? Why would you want to do this? Well, what I might consider doing is on this first one, adding in a random kit, and I'll have this recording. So let's say all I want are the kick and the clap from that. Sorry, my hands are all over the place, so this will take a second. Okay, so I have my kick and my clap. Maybe I'll line them like this. But I want to do processing specifically to these two guys together to get them to glue and fit nicely. So maybe I'll add a reverb, which you probably wouldn't do, but for the sake of example. That high end actually sounds quite nice on that. Okay, so I could process those together. Okay, so now that I have the kick and the clap that I want, what I could do is load in a different preset, and let's load in something like high percussion. Okay, and I could go through now, and I need to move these to begin with so that we're not overlapping at all. We can see that we have these guys playing here, and if I wanted to be safe, I could move them further. But what I'll just do is I'll take these guys, and I'll just command click all of them. And I'll pull them up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to okay, so let's say that I like these two sounds. I'll go back in. I'll delete everything else again. Sorry for the mundane nature of this. And then I could go and I could drag these into these locations. So now I should have. And the reason why I'd want two separate chains is if I wanted to do processing to both of these two sounds together, but I don't want them to affect what's happening in here. So I could go into this one, go into the effects section, then I could add a delay. Whatever you might choose to have. And now you know, we have that ability to make those processing moves independently. So that's one additional usage of using something like an instrument layer and then stacking up two different drum kits. You can use one for things like the kick, the snare, the clap, and then you might have another one specific to percussion. All right, so I thought I would share that with you. Otherwise, just get in there, experiment around, see what you can come up with. Don't forget that you can drop anything in there. So if you want to even, I don't know, put in an entire array of sounds, you could do it, an entire orchestra. But remember that you only have access to that one MIDI clip like so. So thank you so much for watching. Hope that was helpful. Get in there, mess around, see what you can come up with, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.